What if I told you the cleaner you pass by every single day, the one everyone ignores, the one who seems invisible, could be the person who saves your life? This is the story of a man who lost everything in just one night. His company, his dreams, everything he had worked for. And the person who turned it all around? A janitor nobody noticed until that impossible moment when she became his miracle. By the end of this story, you'll never look at the people around you the same way again. You'll realize that sometimes the greatest blessings come from the most unexpected places. Let me tell you a story about how a man who thought he had everything lost all in one night, and how help came from the most unexpected place. This happened in Boston, a city full of bright lights, busy streets, and endless ambition. It was in this city that Jonathan Reed, a well-known tech CEO, built his entire life. People respected him, some feared him, and many admired the success he carried around like a crown. His company, Blue Peak Technologies, was one of the fastest rising tech firms in the country. Investors trusted him. Big clients chased him. News outlets always wanted his interviews. But the truth about Jonathan was simple. He worked so hard for success that he forgot what it meant to be human. He didn't smile often. He didn't listen much. And he didn't see the people around him. Not truly. His office building stood tall in downtown Boston, surrounded by glass skyscrapers. At night, the building was usually quiet, only a few lights staying on. And on one particular night, a cold, windy night, Jonathan stayed behind long after everyone had gone home. He stared at his computer screen, exhausted but determined. His company was preparing for the biggest launch in its history, and failure was not an option. The clock ticked past midnight. He loosened his tie, rubbed his eyes, and reached for another cup of cold coffee. That was when everything began to fall apart. First, the lights in his office flickered. Then his computer screen froze. Then it went black. At first, Jonathan thought it was a small power glitch. But then his phone buzzed. Dozens of messages came in at once. Employees, managers, and partners all texting him. "Sir, the servers are down. We can't access the system. All data is locked. This looks like a breach." Jonathan's heart began to race. He rushed to the company's control room, but what he saw there made his stomach drop. Every screen flashed red. Warning signs everywhere. Files corrupted. Security walls broken. Systems being wiped clean. It was a cyber attack, a massive one. His company's years of work, millions of dollars, sensitive client information, everything was being stolen right in front of him. His entire empire crumbling in seconds. Jonathan tried calling the IT team, but no one answered. Some were asleep, others were out of reach. And some, he realized painfully, had abandoned the company earlier that day because of the pressure he placed on them. For a moment, Jonathan stood there alone in the cold room, listening to the beeping alarms. He felt helpless, something he had never felt before. His breath shook. His fingers trembled. For the first time in many years, Jonathan whispered something he never imagined he would say. "I can't stop this. I need help." But help was not coming from the people he expected. Not from his managers. Not from his engineers. Not from his partners. Not even from expensive consultants he always relied on. No, help came from the one person in the building he had never really noticed. A person he always walked past without looking twice. Her name was Isabella Torres, the night janitor. Isabella was a quiet woman in her early 40s. She wore simple clothes, tied her hair back every evening, and cleaned the offices with gentle movements. Most nights, Jonathan barely acknowledged her existence, just a nod, sometimes not even that. That night, she pushed her cleaning cart into the control room, not knowing what was happening. She saw Jonathan pacing, sweating, muttering to himself. She saw the red screens blinking like danger signs in every direction. "Sir, are you okay?" she asked softly. Jonathan snapped. "No, I am not okay. The whole system is collapsing. I don't have time for cleaning services right now." But Isabella didn't leave. She looked at the screen for a long moment, her expression slowly changing from curiosity to recognition, then to concern. "Sir," she said again, this time with a different tone. This is a coordinated attack. And whoever is doing this knows your system inside out. Jonathan turned to her sharply. How do you know that? He asked. She hesitated, took a breath, then said something Jonathan never expected. Because I used to work in cybersecurity. He stared at her, confused. You used to what? Isabella gently placed her cleaning cloth down. Her hands shook as she spoke. Years ago, before my husband died, I was part of a cybersecurity team in San Diego. I left everything after life became too heavy. Jonathan blinked, struggling to understand. This janitor, this woman he barely noticed, was telling him she once protected systems like his? But before he could question her further, the alarms got louder. More files were being wiped. The company was seconds away from total destruction. Sir, Isabella said firmly, I can stop this, but I need access to your main terminal now. Jonathan hesitated. This was his company's most sensitive system, but he looked at the screens. He felt his chest tightening. He had no one else, no team, no experts, no options. Just this woman, this forgotten woman. Fine, he said. Do whatever you can. Isabella sat at the main desk, her fingers trembling at first, then moving with growing confidence. She typed quickly, bypassing blocks, countering attacks, tracing the hackers' entry points. The speed of her hands shocked Jonathan. It was like watching someone come back to life, someone who had been waiting for this moment for years. Within minutes, she slowed the attack, then blocked it, then forced the hacker out completely. Jonathan watched in disbelief. His company, saved by someone he had never valued. Isabella leaned back in the chair, breathing heavily. It's not over, she whispered. They will try again. And trust me, this wasn't random. Jonathan stared at her, realizing she knew more than she was saying. And at that moment, that exact moment, he understood something that would change his life forever. Sometimes the person you overlook is the one who carries the answer you've been searching for. Sometimes greatness hides in silence. And sometimes the strongest warrior in the room is the one holding a mop. I remember that night so clearly, the kind of night where the city feels too quiet, almost like it knows something terrible is about to happen. Ethan stayed late at the office, trying to fix a problem he didn't understand. He sat alone in that huge building, surrounded by blinking screens and warning alarms that wouldn't stop screaming. The cyber attack had gotten worse, much worse. Every file was locked, every system was frozen, every backup had been corrupted, and every IT staff member had already given up and gone home, saying, Sir, there is nothing more we can do tonight. But Ethan refused to leave. He wasn't just fighting for his company. He was fighting for his identity, his pride, his entire life's work. At some point, his head dropped into his hands, and he whispered to himself, I can't believe this is happening. Everything I built gone. Ethan almost laughed. Well, my company is collapsing, my investors are panicking, and I can't stop any of it. So yes, maybe you're right. For a moment, they just stood there in the silence of that dark office floor. Him, a fallen CO. Her, a cleaner most people never noticed. Then something unexpected happened. Elena stepped closer and looked at one of the screens, flashing lines of corrupted code. She leaned in, her eyes narrowed slightly, the way someone stares at something familiar. Ethan noticed and frowned. You recognize this? Elena took a long breath, as if trying to decide whether to speak or walk away forever. Finally, she said the words that changed everything. I used to work in cybersecurity. A long time ago. Ethan blinked. He thought she was joking. But she wasn't. She explained quietly. Before I lost my husband, before I lost everything, I used to protect companies from attacks like this. But life happened, and, well, here I am. Her voice didn't carry shame, just a heavy sadness. Ethan didn't know what to say. He didn't know whether to believe her or not. She was a cleaner, not an expert, not a specialist. But then she said something only a real professional would know. This isn't random. Someone targeted you. Someone who knows your system well. Ethan felt his stomach twist. How can you tell? He asked. Elena walked to another computer and pointed at a line of malicious code. This is a backdoor method. she explained. Someone planted this long before the attack happened, maybe months ago. Her voice was calm, steady, too steady for a beginner. Ethan took a step closer. Can you fix it? He asked. Elena looked around the room nervously. Sir, I'm just a cleaner. I'm not even supposed to touch these computers. But can you fix it? Ethan repeated, his voice desperate now. She slowly nodded. I can try. That was all Ethan needed to hear. He pulled out a chair and said, Please. Elena sat down, took a deep breath, and placed her hands on the keyboard like someone who hadn't touched a piano in years, but still remembered every note. Her fingers began moving fast, too fast for Ethan to even follow. Lines of code appeared. Files began to unlock. Systems started to reboot. Ethan stood there in shock. This woman, the cleaner, was doing more in minutes than his entire IT department had done all day. At one point, she whispered to herself, This attack, I've seen this pattern before. Ethan leaned closer. What do you mean? It's a style of hacking used by professional saboteurs, not amateurs. Someone wanted your company destroyed, and they were patient about it. The more she worked, the clearer it became. This wasn't a simple attack. This was personal. Someone inside Horizon Labs had betrayed them. An hour passed. Then another. Then another. Finally, Elena leaned back, exhausted but triumphant. Your system is stable, she said. Not perfect yet, but no longer falling apart. Ethan couldn't believe it. He actually felt tears burning behind his eyes. Elena, how can I ever? Before he finished the sentence, she shook her head. I didn't do this for money or reward, sir, she said gently. I did it because I know what it feels like to watch everything collapse. And if I can save someone else from that pain, I will. Those words hit Ethan straight in the heart. For the first time that night, he felt a glimmer of hope. But Elena wasn't done. She stood, wiped her hands on her uniform, and said, You'll need tighter security. Someone planted this attack intentionally, and they might try again. Then she picked up her mop bucket and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she paused and said, If you need more help, I'll be here tomorrow night. Ethan watched her walk away, stunned. He suddenly realized something important. Sometimes, the person you overlook is the one holding the key to your survival, and the cleaner he barely noticed had just saved his entire company. The next evening felt different, heavier somehow. Ethan arrived at the office before sunset, long before Elena's shift. He couldn't stop thinking about everything she had said the night before. A backdoor planted months ago. Someone inside the company. Someone patient. Someone dangerous. The words echoed in his mind all day. He tried to focus on work. But every time he looked at his employees, he caught himself wondering, who among them would sabotage him like this? Who would want the company destroyed? Who would want him ruined? And more importantly, why? But no matter how hard he tried to guess, the face remained a blur in his mind. That evening, when the night lights flickered on in the building, he heard quiet footsteps behind him. He turned to see Elena walking in, wearing the same blue cleaning uniform, carrying the same mop bucket. Yet tonight she seemed different, more confident, more sure of her place. Good evening, sir, she said softly. Ethan smiled. Please call me Ethan. After what you did last night, I think you've earned that. She smiled politely. All right, Ethan, are you ready to continue? He nodded, guiding her toward the computer stations. The room was dim, except for the glow of the monitors. Before we begin, Ethan said, I need to ask something. Why didn't you tell anyone you had this kind of knowledge? Elena sighed and sat down. Because people don't always want to hear your story, she said. Sometimes they just want you to stay in whatever box they place you in. And after my husband died, after I lost my home, I didn't have the strength to fight for anything anymore. Her voice trembled slightly. I took the first job I could find. Sweeping floors was easier than trying to rebuild a career that had collapsed. Ethan felt a deep ache in his chest, not from pity, but from admiration. This woman had lost everything and still found a way to keep moving. Elena cleared her throat and turned to the screen. Let's continue, she said, her voice steady again. She started scanning logs, tracing patterns, and digging through hidden files, moving with a kind of silent brilliance that Ethan found almost hypnotic. The more she uncovered, the more his disbelief grew. "There," she said suddenly, tapping the screen. "Another hidden file." Ethan leaned in. "What is it?" "A tracker," she replied. "Whoever planted this backdoor was monitoring your internal system activity. Someone wanted to know exactly when to strike." She clicked through more layers of code until she found the access trail. And then she froze. Her face tensed. "I know the signature." Ethan frowned. "From where?" "This style of coding, it belongs to someone who used to work for Titan Shield Security, a rival to Horizon Labs." Ethan's heart dropped. "You mean this is corporate sabotage?" Elena shook her head slowly. "No, this isn't just business. This is personal." She clicked again, tracing the signature, decrypting it bit by bit. Finally, after almost an hour, a single name appeared on the screen. A name Ethan never expected. A name that felt like a punch to the chest. Adrian Blake. Ethan whispered, "No, no, that's not possible." Elena turned to him. "You know him?" "Know him?" Ethan said bitterly. "He was my closest friend. We started this company together before he left to join Titan. I trusted him with everything." Elena studied Ethan's expression. The shock, the disbelief, the hurt. "I'm sorry," she said gently. Ethan began pacing. His voice shook with anger. Why would he do this? Why try to destroy me? Destroy the company we built together? Elena looked down at the screen. "Sometimes envy grows in places you least expect," she said. "Sometimes the people closest to you carry the deepest resentment." Ethan stopped walking. He felt a painful heaviness settle in his chest. He thought of all the late nights he and Adrian had worked side by side years ago. The celebrations, the dreams, the promises, the shared sacrifices. All of it now twisted into betrayal. Elena stood and faced him. "We need proof," she said. "Evidence strong enough that even Titan Shield can't deny it. But we have to be careful. If Adrian realizes we're onto him, he may attack again, and this time, harder." Ethan nodded, swallowing the pain. "What do you need?" he asked. "Access to your internal server," she replied. "And trust." "You have both," Ethan said immediately. Elena took a deep breath, then sat back down and got to work. Hours passed as she carefully traced Adrian's steps. She tracked how he installed the back door, how he disguised his access, how he timed the attack. It was a masterpiece of sabotage and a deeply personal one. At one point, she whispered, "He knew exactly where your weak spots were, because he learned them from you." Ethan clenched his fists. "Why didn't I see this coming?" he said quietly. Elena paused and looked at him kindly. "Because you trusted him," she said. "And trust is not a weakness. It only becomes painful when it's misplaced." Those words cut deep, but they also brought a strange comfort. Around midnight, Elena finally sat back. "I have enough evidence to prove Adrian is behind the attack," she said. "But we still need one more thing." "What's that?" Ethan asked. "We need to stop him before he tries again." Ethan nodded slowly. "Then let's finish this." Elena looked up at him, her eyes steady. "Ethan, are you ready for what comes next?" He didn't answer immediately. He knew that confronting Adrian meant opening wounds far deeper than the company's damage. It meant facing betrayal head-on. Finally, he nodded. "I'm ready." Elena closed her laptop gently. "Then tomorrow night," she said quietly, "we go after the truth." And in that moment, Ethan realized something important. He wasn't just fighting for his company anymore. He was fighting for his dignity, his future, and his heart. And by his side stood a woman who had already saved him once. The following night, the city skyline sparkled through the office windows. Ethan stood at the top floor, the weight of the past weeks pressing down on him. He could feel in his chest the mix of anger, fear, and determination. He wasn't just protecting a company anymore. He was protecting something far bigger, his life's work, his trust, and the people who believed in him. Elena arrived quietly, moving with her usual calm assurance, carrying her laptop and a small bag of tools. Ethan noticed how different she looked now. Not just a janitor, not just a savior of a broken company, but someone ready to face the storm that was coming. "Are you sure about this?" Ethan asked. Elena looked up at him. Her dark eyes glimmered with quiet strength. "Yes, he thinks he's untouchable. He's wrong." Ethan exhaled slowly. Memories of Adrian flashed in his mind. The late night spent laughing in the empty office, planning project together, sharing dreams. And now, Adrian had become the very person trying to destroy him. "We go carefully," Elena continued. "We need evidence he can't deny, and we need to catch him in the act." Hours passed as Elena set up monitoring systems and decoys. She created fake files that looked important, files that would tempt Adrian if he tried to access them again. Ethan watched her work with a mixture of awe and admiration. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with a confidence that made him feel both calm and inspired. "Why do you do this?" Ethan asked softly. Elena paused, turning to him. "Because someone once believed in me, even when I was invisible. And now, it's my turn to fight for someone else." Ethan swallowed the lump in his throat. He had never felt so connected to anyone, so understood. In the silence of that office, amidst the hum of computers and the glow of monitors, he realized that this partnership was more than business. It was trust, respect, and something quietly powerful. Around midnight, a shadow moved in the hallway. Elena froze, her eyes narrowing at the faint glow of Adrian's silhouette. Ethan's pulse quickened. This was it, the moment they had been waiting for. Adrian approached Elena's desk casually, trying to appear calm. But Ethan noticed the tension in his shoulders, the quickness in his movements. Elena didn't move. She stayed seated, pretending to work, letting Adrian make the first move. Adrian leaned closer to her laptop. "Still working late, huh?" he said, trying to sound friendly, though his voice betrayed a hint of menace. "Just finishing up," Elena replied quietly, never looking up. Ethan held his breath. Every second stretched. Then Adrian's hand hovered over the keyboard. He was about to access the files. But Elena had anticipated this. She triggered the silent alert system she had set up, and the office lights flickered on suddenly. "Ethan," she whispered. Ethan stepped out from the shadows, his face pale but determined. Adrian froze. He hadn't expected anyone else to be there. "It's over, Adrian," Ethan said firmly. "We know everything." Adrian's expression shifted from surprise to defiance. "You don't understand," he said bitterly. "I did what I had to do. You've always had everything handed to you. You've always had luck and privilege. I had nothing. And this?" He gestured vaguely, as if the ruin of the company justified the choices he had made. Ethan shook his head slowly. "No, what you did is betrayal, and nothing justifies that." Elena stood, calm and poised. "It's time to face the truth," she said. Adrian's defiance faltered when he realized the evidence on the laptop, the monitoring system, and the logs were all undeniable. He tried to speak, to argue, but his words fell flat. "You underestimated us," Elena said. "You thought I was invisible. You thought no one would notice. But we did. We prepared. We were ready." Adrian's eyes darted between them, realizing that every step he had taken had been traced. His arrogance crumbled in an instant. Ethan felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. Sadness for betrayal of a friend he had once trusted. Relief that the danger was ending. "You chose the wrong side, Adrian," he said quietly. "But now we will do the right thing." Within hours, law enforcement was involved. Adrian was escorted out of the building, and evidence was turned over to authorities. It was a public scandal, but one that revealed the truth. Horizon Labs had been attacked from within, but thanks to Elena, the company not only survived, it strengthened. The next morning, the office buzzed with energy. Employees whispered about the mysterious night. But when they saw Elena walking down the hall, there was a newfound respect in their eyes. She was no longer invisible. She had proven herself, not just through skill, but through courage, loyalty, and heart. Ethan found her in the small office she had started organizing for the security division. "Thank you," he said quietly. Elena looked up, smiling faintly. "You don't have to thank me," she said. "You trusted me." That's all that mattered. Ethan felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't expected. No, you saved more than the company. You reminded me what matters. You reminded me about trust, about hope, about courage. Elena's eyes softened. Sometimes the right person comes along at the worst possible moment and changes everything. Ethan nodded. He knew that now more than ever. He had faced betrayal, fear, and loss, and through it all, he had learned something invaluable. People matter more than systems. Trust is stronger than suspicion, and courage comes in unexpected forms. And in that quiet office, the two of them, Ethan and Elena, looked at each other with a bond deeper than words. Not just colleagues, not just saviors of company, but two people who had endured the storm together and found strength in one another. Outside, the city continued its pulse, indifferent to human struggles, yet secretly bearing witness to triumphs born in quiet courage. And for Ethan and Elena, the night ended not in fear, but with a promise that together they could face anything. Weeks passed, and Horizon Labs slowly returned to its rhythm. Systems were secured, files restored, and the major deal that had seemed lost was back on track. Investors who had feared the worst returned, inspired by the transparency and courage the company had shown. The story of the cyber attack and the hidden hero who saved it spread, quietly at first, then exploded across news outlets, business magazines, and social media. Ethan noticed the change most in the little things. Employees who had once ignored Elena now paused to greet her. They didn't just see her as a security expert. They saw her as someone extraordinary. She still carried herself with the same humility, yet her presence radiated authority and respect. The janitor who had once been invisible was now the heartbeat of Horizon Lab's security team. One morning, Ethan brought Elena to the old server room, the place where she had first saved the company. The fluorescent lights flickered on, illuminating the space that had once been the scene of chaos. "I wanted you to see this," he said, gesturing around. "This is where everything changed." Elena's eyes scanned the racks of servers, memories of that night flooding back. "It doesn't feel real," she said softly. "It's like yesterday, and yet everything has changed." Ethan smiled. "It's changed because of you. You didn't just fix the systems. You fixed something bigger. You reminded me why we fight, why we care, and who we're fighting for." He guided her to a newly installed plaque above the server racks. In elegant letters, it read, "Elena Martinez Innovation Center, for courage, vision, and unseen heroes." Tears filled Elena's eyes. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say nothing," Ethan replied. "Just remember this moment. Remember that what you do, even when no one notices, can change lives in ways you can't imagine." The bond between them had deepened, forged in shared trials and quiet trust. Over time, their friendship blossomed into something more. Lunches and coffee breaks became shared moments of laughter. Late nights in the office, once filled with tension and fear, became moments of connection and reflection. Ethan learned to see people in a new way. He realized that titles, positions, and appearances could blind him to the real value in those around him. Elena had taught him that courage often comes in quiet, unnoticed forms. She had reminded him that every person has a story, a skill, a strength, sometimes hidden, waiting for the right moment to shine. One crisp morning, as the city awoke beneath the sunrise, Ethan invited Elena to a small rooftop terrace overlooking the skyline. The air smelled of coffee and the city's faint early bustle. He took her hands in his eyes reflecting a depth of emotion he rarely showed. "Elena," he began softly, "you've changed my life. You didn't just save the company. You saved me. And I want to spend the rest of my life with you, building, fighting, and growing together." Elena's lips curved into a gentle smile, tears glistening in her eyes. "I chose this a long time ago, Ethan," she said. "You just had to see it." The city below sparkled, indifferent yet somehow witnessing their quiet miracle. In that moment, they both understood that life's most meaningful victories were never about wealth, power, or recognition. They were about trust, courage, and the people who stand by us when the world turns its back. Months later, Horizon Labs thrived. Security systems were fortified. Teams were stronger, and the company's reputation had never been higher. Investors praised the leadership, and the story of Elena's heroism became an example for others, a reminder that greatness often hides where we least expect it. But the greatest triumph was personal. Ethan and Elena, once strangers whose lives collided in a moment of desperation, had found a partnership rooted in trust, admiration, and love. They celebrated not just professional victories, but the quiet, everyday victories. Shared meals, late-night conversations, and knowing glances that said, "We've been through this together and we'll face anything next." On a bright Saturday, surrounded by family, friends, and the city that had watched their journey, Ethan and Elena exchanged vows in a small, intimate ceremony. No grand hall, no media glare, just people who loved them and understood what they had endured. "You saw me," Elena said softly, her voice steady. "When no one else did, you believed in me, trusted me, and gave me a second chance." "And you saved me," Ethan replied, squeezing her hands. "Not just my company, but me. You reminded me what matters, who matters, and why we never give up, even when the world seems against us." The ceremony ended, but their story didn't. It continued in the quiet courage of daily life, in the work they did together, and in the legacy they built for others. Horizon Labs became not just a company, but a symbol of resilience, vision, and the power of seeing what others overlook. And somewhere in the city, in offices, homes, and streets, people who felt invisible or overlooked might hear this story and realize, sometimes the person who changes your life is standing right in front of you, unnoticed. Sometimes salvation comes in the form of someone willing to fight for you when you can't fight for yourself. And sometimes miracles aren't things, they're people. Because Ethan and Elena proved it. Courage, trust, and quiet heroism can create miracles bigger than anyone imagined. And every day afterward, they live with the gratitude and awareness that life is not just about surviving. It's about noticing, believing, and lifting each other up. As the sun set over the city, they walked hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. Not alone, not afraid, and forever changed.